Alright guys, so working on getting the quarter panel patch in. Got most of the spot welds drilled and this whole section out. They did not cut off the original paneling that came up into here, and they just overlapped it, so I'm probably going to go ahead and get rid of this part here and make it as tight as possible all the way down to this point. So I'm going to finish getting the rest of this metal off here, but I'm going to have to rebuild some of this lip for the inner wheel well area for where it attaches to the quarter down here, because this is pretty much rotted from about here down to here. So I'll have to probably cut two separate pieces, because I don't think I'll be able to actually form that the way that they did with this. So what I'll probably do is take one separate piece for the outside and then one separate piece for the inside. That way I can go ahead and spot weld this back on without big problem. Alright guys, so this is kind of what I decided to do with the quarter panel. This is something that's bugged me immensely ever since I got the car, to be honest with you. Other than some of the other things I found that they did with this car here and there that weren't quite as big of a deal as this. And those of you who know me, you know I'm not a purist when it comes to rebuilding muscle cars unless it's a very specific one, and then, you know, I'd like to have it rebuilt to exact specs. But not being a purist, I am a perfectionist when it comes to certain things. It's got to be done that way, or it's got to be fixed. Some of you might be the same way, but this quarter panel, man, has bothered me. Just bothered me ever since I got the car. And the reason for that is when they put the quarter on, and I've said this before, so I'm going to repeat it again now, they overlapped it. Okay, and as you can see here, and up here, when you overlap a damn panel, you know, it sits over the original panel. So that creates a little bit of a height difference. Well, when you do that, then you've got all this filler that they use to try and adjust that lip. The second thing that really pisses me off is they left roughly that much of an overlap of the original panel in this area. So in here somewhere. And then in here, it's a little thinner, not quite as much of an overlap. But the thing that I have noticed, and you guys might have noticed this yourselves, they didn't actually completely weld it. They tacked it in a few places. All these little holes you guys see are not spot welded. They're drilled. I think this is where they might have clamped it. I don't know. But the main place that I do see that they actually went ahead and spot welded the area was up to here, right in this corner, a little bit here, and then the rest of it's just little tacks, little tacks here and there. So not a single one of these damn holes is filled. And you can see a little bit of a difference right here where this little hole is, where the panel sits off of that replacement panel a little bit. Now, the bottom areas around the wheel well and down below there and up in that corner there are all pretty much about where they need to be. They're not really overlapping much of anything. They went ahead and removed that part of the original panel. The only thing that I did notice is originally they kept this area in here, and that's where they used it to tie into, because probably they decided they couldn't get in here to these rocker panel to do the spot welds. So now this is something I've never seen done. I've never really seen or heard it being talked about. This is going to be one of those things that, in theory, should work. Not necessarily going to. So you guys have already noticed the tape here. I'm going to cut this out through the replacement panel all the way down to the original panel. And basically what that's going to do for me is create an even lineup. And I'm going to go ahead and completely butt weld the entire thing so it's even with the original panel and the replacement panel. Now, that being said, like I said, the bottom parts are all where they need to be. What they did is they put the bottom part just about where it needed to be and then overlap the top. So, like I said, in theory, it should work. I'll get that lip off of there, and since there's only a little tack weld here and there, cut the tack weld and remove that strip, and then tie it back into the original panel, and then grind it down smooth. Whether or not this is going to work, don't know. I've never done it, never seen it done. And there may be a perfectly good reason why that's never been done. But the rest of the quarter panel's solid. It's good. It's not rotted out. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that overlap just pisses me off. All else fails, if this doesn't work, just buy a new quarter panel and redo the whole thing. I know it seems like a lot of extra work, but the way that they did this, just it isn't good, and I can see through some of these little holes that they've got in this damn thing that it is gonna eventually rust and rot out. So it's either do this or buy a new panel. To be honest with you, once I cut that part of it out, it's really not going to be a big deal if I decide to get a new panel instead of butt welding this one back, because it's going to be the same amount of work either way. So hopefully it goes well and hopefully it works, but this is what I'm going to go ahead and try and do. So I'm going to get that line cut right above the tape, and we'll see how this works out. I'm sure a lot of you guys are sitting there thinking in your heads that, yeah, I'm a little bit crazy. You have seen me work with metal. You've seen what I do. You see how I can kind of make panels out of nothing. So I'm pretty sure I can make this work. It's just going to be one of those things that you don't know until you try it. So here we go. All right, guys. So I got this quarter panel pretty much cut where I want it. Now the big issue was the little bit of overlap that I left on there that needs to come off. Well, parts of this you can see how very unprofessionally done this whole panel was. This area here from here to here, I pulled off with my hand. It wasn't even stuck. There's a few other little areas that I pretty much just lifted up by fingernail. However, back here is a fucking nightmare. They tacked it literally every half inch. Little spot welds all the way up. From back here to here. And right up in here. So we pretty much got most of this off. Bent up the paneling a little bit, but that's not going to be a big issue. Some of it needed to be readjusted upward. Partly because I'm going to say that when they did this corner back here, to me it looks like they might have warped it, got a little too hot. So right here where it's at fits perfect. And looks just about right with where the rest of the panel should be. So I may just leave this area, feather it out, and tack weld that, or butt weld that area there. This corner, I went ahead and took off a lot of this filler. I don't even know what to say about that. That's just terrible. It was completely packed. God, there was a quarter of an inch almost of fucking filler in this area. Of course, I plan on taking the whole car down to bare metal before I get anywhere with paint, but that's for a later date. This is something I'm not sure if I touched base on or said anything about, but most of this panel in areas wasn't actually welded. Looks like they took brass brazing rod and sealed it that way, kind of like a weld. And you can see here that there's some flex in this. It's not real tight. I'm probably going to readjust that, drill these out. Same thing up there with the damn door jamb area was like that. But looking at where I cut all this, it's going to line up perfectly with the original panel. Shouldn't be an issue butt welding it. Other than that, it's not going to be done tonight. Like I said, still got to get all this off. But for the most part, I think I'm going to be able to salvage this quarter and be able to butt weld it all back together. This corner I think I'll cut out and replace so it's even, symmetrical. Doesn't need any more filler because, like I talked about earlier, I fucking hate filler. And to be honest with you, this quarter panel's probably got more filler in it than any vehicle should have on its entire body. And another issue is that other corner, but we'll get to that later, and I'll show you why that's an issue. It has to do with this gap and what they did with it, but we'll talk about that at a completely different time. Anyway, guys, back to it. Guys, so got the last bit of that off of this area here, this part of the panel. It's looking like it's all gonna match up just right once I get everything kind of bent back out. This has been in a little bit right there, but it'll match up perfectly. You can see the rest of the lines here for the replacement panel going back to the original panel, and man, it's gonna be a hell of a lot better doing it that way, by the way. That way it's no overlap, no chance of rust getting up in between the panels, because you know, there's a huge gap, and I wish I could have shown you guys, but getting up in there to actually show you would have been pretty much impossible. But they're about that much off from the original panel and the overlapped panel, allowing basically moisture and dust and dirt to get up in there. And you can see along where I took some of the overlap off already that there was some surface rust starting under that, and you know, another 5-10 years it might have just completely rotted out. So that was one of my biggest issues. But two, I just think it's tacky as hell to do an overlap like that. You get it butted up with the original panel and butt weld it and then grind it down smooth, so it's basically one piece. That's the way to do it in my opinion, and that's the way it should be done. It's very professional to do it that way. I'm just happy that I didn't need to order a whole new panel, because like I said, guys, this went a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to, and I hoped that this would work. And the way everything looks right now, it's going to be perfect. I've got perfect amount of gap since it was already overlaid over the original panel. The way I cut it out, it's just going to be just the perfect gap for me to get in there and butt weld all this back in. So it'll take up the need to use so much filler. I will use a little bit of filler in the sense of maybe fiberglass, and then a real light skim coat when I go to get ready to prime and paint the car. I'll still have to get up in this corner. I'm going to take off this piece right in here. That's the original piece that they overlapped it, because the replacement panel I've got, it's got that whole edge coming up to here. So I'll get this cut out, and I will put that panel back in there, and I'll butt weld that as well. So this whole quarter is going to basically be salvageable, and I'm very, very happy about that. I know I've already said that, but say it again because that's fucking impressive. You guys got to definitely give me credit the way I build cars and the element that I build them, I guess. One day I will have a shop, and that'll be great, but until then, I'm going to keep doing what I do and do it as quality as possible. So I'm done on this panel for the night. Work on a few other things, and probably get started back on this in the next day or two, and hopefully be ready to start butt welding it all back together. So right on, guys. We'll catch you on part 2 of this video here when I get back to it. So as always, stay frosty, ride or die, Reaper out.